We're just talking about Hillary Clinton as a peg, really, for what's going on with the Epstein files, which is extreme interest. This is not going away here.
No, it is not going away. If the Trump administration and Donald Trump in particular believe that they can wish this story away, the American public have a different tune to sing. What are we talking about here? Well, let's take a look at Google searches for Epstein. In fact, in the month of February, it is higher than it's ever been. Up like a rocket, up 900% versus a month ago. And the top name associated with Googling for Epstein, well, it is Donald Trump. So the story isn't not going away. It's actually getting searched more and more and more, becoming more relevant in the minds of the American public.
It's so interesting. This is, more than it was when Congress voted to force to release them, more than it was when they actually released some of them, more than it was when they released more of them. Now it's the most it's ever been.
The most it has ever been, and the previous highs were also very high.
All right, let's talk about what this means for President Trump. How do people view his handling of the whole issue?
Yeah, this is bad political news for President Trump. Yesterday we spoke about the fact that Donald Trump's overall approval rating, his net approval rating, was at a record low for term number 2. What is the worst issue for Donald Trump of any of the major issues? Look at this. We got them all up on the screen. Immigration, foreign policy, the economy, trade and tariffs, and then all the way down at the bottom is the Epstein case. Look, he's underwater on immigration, foreign policy, the economy, and tariffs, all between minus 16 and minus 25 points. The Epstein case, though, is on another planet. Look at this. Negative 39 points. He's 39 points underwater. Basically a split between 30% approve and 70% disapprove. The Epstein case is not the story the Trump administration and Trump in particular and Republicans at large want in the news, because it is a big political loser for him, and these numbers have remained very consistent. No matter which poll you look at, he's about 40 points underwater in the Epstein case, by far his worst issue, and he's not actually good on the rest of mine.
Yeah, from a political standpoint, ABE, anything but Epstein, really, for President Trump there. How about among Republicans?
Okay, so if the Epstein case is something that absolutely is terrible in the minds of the center of the electorate, among independents, in fact, the number is closer to minus 50 on the net approval. If it's absolutely terrible among the center of the electorate, among Republicans, look at this. GOP who approve of Trump, immigration, the economy, foreign policy, trade and tariffs, all of them basically between 77 and 85. But look at the Epstein case. Just 55% of Republicans approve of Trump on the Epstein case. It is something that divides Republicans, and it is something that the overall electorate really doesn't like.
I mean, they love him on almost everything else, but Epstein, not so much.
Not so much, and that's the reason why Thomas Massie's attacks really seem to have an impact. Look at this. I got 4 numbers across for you on this screen here. They are all second-term lows for the given pollster. What are we talking about? AP North, 26 points below water. NBC, 22 points below water. Yahoo YouGov, 20 points below water. Quinnipiac, 19 points below water. So we're ranging from negative 19 points all the way to negative 26 points. Kate, there's this question that folks keep asking, where is the floor for Donald Trump? And I'm not sure there is a floor, because if there is one, Donald Trump, at least in term number 2, has just fallen through it to another low level.
How does this compare with his first term, and how does this compare with Joe Biden?
Okay, so we look at these numbers right here. One of the things that Donald Trump had been arguing, his proponents have been arguing, you know what, he's doing better than he was doing in term number 1. No longer is that the case. What are we talking about here? Okay, net approval rating at this point in the term. Look at this. 22 points below water on average when you average all the pollsters from the last slide. That is actually lower. That is lower than he was at this point in term number 1, when he was 17 points below water. So he's doing 5 points worse, and he's doing way worse than Joe Biden was doing at this point in his term number 1, when he was 13 points below water. So the bottom line is this. Donald Trump is setting new records for himself in term number 2, setting new records for himself compared to where he was at this point in term number 1, and he's doing worse than Joe Biden, which is, of course, the comparison that Donald Trump does not want to be, because we all know what happened to Joe Biden. His party lost the House in term number 1, that midterm elections, and, of course, Joe Biden was not reelected to another term. At this point, the numbers are no bueno for the President of the United States.
What's driving this that you're seeing right now?
Okay, Kate. You know what? This is the segment. We have done it over and over and over again because he keeps setting new lows for himself. What are we talking about? What we're talking about independents. We're talking about independents. When you lose the center of the electorate, you lose the American people. Trump's net approval rating among independents, at this point, you go back term number 1, he was 17 points below water. Now, according to Quinnipiac, he is 27 points below water. I don't understand how this works out well for the President of the United States. When you are 27 points below water, underwater, with the center of the electorate, with independents, you lose, your party loses. I've made the comparisons before, he's more underwater than Greg Louganis. I've made the comparisons with all those different divers. And the bottom line is this: you can continue to make those, but over time, when you keep making those same comparisons, they run a little bit old. But at this point, I don't really know who to even compare Donald Trump to, because he's just so low, and he's so low with the center of the electorate. Governors have a whole lot of power, and there's all this talk of a Democratic wave. But the gubernatorial races nationwide should stand as a wake-up call for Democrats, because take a look here. The race raiders, governors post-2026 election, at least tilting to the Republicans. Look at this. A majority, 26. That is, at this point, the number of governors that are expected, at least tilting towards the Republican Party at this point. Democrats come in at just 20. The rest of the races are toss-up. Of course, you sum up to 50. And I will note that the Republicans right now hold a 26 to 24 gubernatorial seat advantage. So at this point, it doesn't look like Republicans on the net and the aggregate are actually going to lose any governorships. In fact, when you add in those toss-ups, they may gain. So this should stand as a major wake-up call to Democrats, because if there's a wave building, it has not, at least at this point, hit the state level when it comes to governorships.
And add to that, you point out that when it comes to governor's races, Democrats have had a bit of a problem over recent years.
Yeah, they have had a big problem recently. If you go back, the last time that Democrats held a majority of governorships was all the way back in 2010, and that streak is expected to continue. And I will note, I went all the way back through the record books, Kate Baldwin. I went all the way back through the record books. This is now the longest streak in which Democrats did not hold a majority of governorships in at least a century. This is a massive problem for Democrats, because, as we mentioned at the top, a lot of the policy is determined on the state level. And if all of a sudden you can't actually lead a majority of governorships, the executive branch on the state level, that means Republicans are, in fact, forming and implementing most of the policies in the states, and therefore a lot of the policies nationwide.
Well, and the power of the governor also has to do with how the state legislature it looks. What are you seeing there?
Yeah, okay. So it's not just the governorships. How about those state legislatures, right? Okay, take a look here. Republicans have held a majority of state legislatures since 2012. And again, this is the longest such streak, dating back at least a century, in which Republicans have held the majority of the state legislatures. In fact, for much of the 20th century, what you saw was Democrats actually held more state legislatures than Republicans did. And now it is the exact opposite. And if you go state legislature by state legislature, at this point it seems likely, of course still uncertain since we have a number of months until November elections, that Republicans will continue the streak of holding the majority of state legislatures, continue their streak of holding the majority of governorships, and therefore Democrats will be locked out of holding a power in positions that really do determine a lot of the policy nationwide. As I said, this should stand as a wake-up call for Democrats, because at this point, Republicans look like they're going to continue to hold the majority of governorships. What the holiday is exactly called? Well, it depends on what state you're in. What are we talking about here? Well, for some of us, tomorrow is President's Day. But how the heck do you spell presidents in the President's Day? Well, in Hawaii, look at this. You get presidents, an S, and then an apostrophe. Nebraska, though, well, they disagree out there, the Cornhuskers. What do they say? Well, they have the apostrophe, but it becomes after the T and before the S. How about in Oregon? Well, the Ducks out there, they say, you know what? We don't need that stinking apostrophe, so it's just President's Day with no apostrophe whatsoever. Of course, maybe tomorrow isn't President's Day. Maybe it's some version of celebrating Washington's birthday. Well, that's exactly the case in Iowa. It's Washington's birthday. That's who's getting celebrated tomorrow. How about in Ohio? Well, they say, you know what? One president's not enough. All of them is too many. So in Ohio, what we're doing is we're celebrating both Washington and Lincoln. Of course, Lincoln's birthday taking place earlier in the month of February. And they decide, you know what, we're going to combine two presidents into one day, being, of course, the third Monday in the month of February. How about in Alabama? Well, down south, they say, you know what, we're going to drop Lincoln. We're going to drop Lincoln from this holiday. Instead, we're going to add a guy from Virginia. We're going to celebrate two guys from Virginia. We're going to add Washington and Jefferson together, two for the price of one. Of course, sometimes maybe we're not celebrating Washington at all. Maybe we're not celebrating the presidents at all. How about this? Okay, is tomorrow a holiday? Yes, in California, it is a holiday, but according to the state code, guess what? It's no name. There's no name for the holiday tomorrow. It's not President's Day. It's not Washington's birthday. How about in Georgia? Where, of course, CNN was born. CNN was born in Georgia. Well, tomorrow, guess what? They decide, you know what? We are going to celebrate Washington's birthday, but we're going to push it. We're going to push it all the way to Christmas Eve. So Washington's birthday is actually observed on December 24th. And then in Delaware, you know what they say? We got enough holidays already. So tomorrow, it ain't no holiday at all. So the answer in Delaware, of course, the first state to ratify the Constitution, you know what they say? We don't need no holiday tomorrow. Not Washington's birthday, not President's Day, nothing, nada, nothing. But the question is, okay, is tomorrow a holiday? Most states say yes. Okay? Is it Washington's birthday or some version thereof? Is it President's Day and some version in thereof? And of course, if it is President's Day, how exactly do you spell it? Well, we go to Google for the answer. What do most people Google? Well, the most Googled version of tomorrow's holiday is, it's right here. It's President's Day with no apostrophe. So, Paula Reed, I wish you a happy early President's Day. Of course, maybe, you know what, you decide it's going to be like the state of New York. It's just going to be, we're going to celebrate Washington's birthday. Observe, because of course, keep in mind, Washington was actually born on February 22nd, which can never be the third Monday in the month of February. This entire holiday, you know what, it's a little bit screwed up, but I'm just going to take the day off. Paula, happy early, well, I guess Washington's birthday, at least for us here in New York. Back to you. RFK Jr. and the CDC have absolutely destroyed their reputation when it comes to vaccines. What are we talking about here? Okay, trust CDC for vaccine information. During the Biden administration, look at that. It was 63%, a majority, yes. Then 59% by April of 2025, 57, 50 by September. And now look at this. Less than 50% of Americans, just 47% of Americans trust the CDC, for goodness sake. When it comes to vaccine information, the majority do not trust the CDC. And what you're seeing, in fact, is a majority of states are not actually following, or at least some of the CDC's child vaccine schedule. My goodness gracious. It takes a lifetime to build a reputation, and apparently it takes only a year to destroy it.
One thing I will note, I imagine if you go back, it was even higher. This is actually after the post-pandemic drop. This is a new drop.
This is a new low, and it has all happened under RFK Jr.
So it's after the pandemic drop. So how do people feel about vaccines and the CDC by party?
Okay, so I think this is really important on what is going on here, okay? Which is, not surprisingly, look at this. Democrats have seen a tremendous drop under this CDC, right? You go from 88% in 2023 to just 55% now. But here's what is so important. It's not just that the Democrats have dropped. It's that despite a Republican administration, Republicans have not seen much of a rise in their trust in the CDC for vaccine information. It was 40% under the Biden CDC, and now it's just 43%. So what you've seen is you've given away all that Democratic trust and built in no real new Republicans who are trusting the CDC. It is a massive shift in public opinion, and one that has really hurt the CDC's credibility under RFK.
So another way of looking at this, if you kind of reverse the perspective here, who do people trust on vaccines?
Who do people trust on vaccines? They trust Democrats on vaccines. That's who they trust on vaccines. Democrats would absolutely love, pretty pleased with a cherry on top for this midterm to be about vaccines. Party trusted more on vaccines. Look at this. Among all voters, it's plus 16. Plus 16 points among all voters, according to the latest Fox News poll. Look at this. Among independents, Look, hello, a 32-point advantage. A 32-point advantage to which party is more trusted on vaccines. They don't trust Republicans. They don't trust the CDC. Who they do trust is Democrats. And that is a massive problem for Republicans if RFK Jr. is out in the public coming into this midterm election.